Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you're tuning in from. Welcome to the first ever Learning Human, hosted by ShapingEDU at Arizona State University. It's so good to see friendly faces and new faces alike. Welcome. I see people trickling into the mess hall now and around the campfire. I see some of you coming in from the Verbella campus where you've just shifted from 3D back into 2D. Welcome, welcome. For those of you traveling near and far, we're so happy to have you here tonight. We have a fun opening reception in store for you. And we invite you also to share along and to tweet along and to Instagram along and whatever it is that you want to do using hashtag LearningHuman. We so appreciate all the energy we're seeing in our Slack workspace so far, and the night is still young, so here we go. I would like to kick things off by first introducing myself. My name is Samantha Becker, and I am the Executive Director for Creative and Communications at the University Technology Office at ASU. Some of you may know me as the Community Director for ShapingEDU, the organization at ASU that's hosting this Learning Human event. You'll hear a little bit more about ShapingEDU soon, but I'm so thrilled to be joining you today as the camp groundskeeper. And I'd love to introduce you to my partner in crime here tonight, Camp Chef Lev Gonik, to share a little bit. Lev, over to you.
Hello, campers! Great to see you all. I'm Lev. I'm your camp chef. And my other gig is as Arizona State University CIO. It's great to be with you. We're loving having you all joining us. As you'll see, there are lots of us coming together for the first ever Learning Human. It's a terrific opportunity for us to learn from each other, to play with one another, especially new things we haven't seen before, and a chance to catch up with old friends and meet some new friends. This project was born on the back of a napkin, like every good project, and there's been just an awesome response over these last 6 weeks as we've pulled together this effort. And we thank all of you campers tonight and those who will be joining us from all over the world over the next week of amazing activities that are there. So we are, as you can sort of see from the slide, well over 2,300 now campers. We're very close to 2,400 who've registered, and we expect folks to show up throughout the next week. As you'll see in just a moment, and if you've been playing around, you'll see that there are over 180 activities that have been planned, many of them by you, for you, and everyone else. We've been promoting and thanking all of our co-convener partners, as you can sort of see from the banner across the backdrop that we've all been using. And most exciting, 90 of you, maybe 90 of the 150 who are here, you're all serving as counselors as well. And we're thankful that in addition to participating in formal sessions, you're also helping us in concierge services to make sure that people get to the right places at the right times along the way. And while we don't have anybody just yet from the Antarctica, all 6 continents are represented, and we're thrilled with that diversity of geographic as well as all the amazing backgrounds along the way. Just one last thing from me before I pass it back over to Sam. There are a lot of folks to thank. There's a whole crew of folks that over this week we're going to get around to thanking, including our amazing camp director and my co-conspirator here. But I want to just take a moment to thank all of the folks who've been sponsors and investors in this remarkable experiment in helping to shape the future of learning in the digital age. our friends from Adobe, Salesforce, and Workday in particular. Thanks for coming in early and for having faith in us being able to co-design together something remarkable and new. Thanks also to our friends and colleagues from AWS, Instructure, Juniper, Slack, Sophia, Verbella, and Zoom. And thanks so much to the camp partners, our colleagues down the road at the University of Arizona, who've always been great partners with us in ShapingEDU, Deloitte, Dropbox, and GSV Ventures. And of course, folks from Sony, thanks to our media sponsor, who will actually be having a live podcast from Inside Learning Human later in the week from EdSurge. So with that, Sam, back over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lev. Everyone watch out for that for that Cam Chef. You never know what he's going to be cooking in the mess hall. Got to stay tuned to see what's coming up. So the whole point of Learning Human is that there's really something for everyone, because there is only one learning human, and it is for all. So our goal here is that there's truly going to be something for everyone every day. I will be passing it over a little bit later on to Lara and Aaron, who are going to be telling you a little bit more about how to navigate and make the most of your experience at Learning Human this week. But suffice it to say, there are a number of themes and then a number of things you can really rely on each day to kind of guide you. So today marks the opening reception. So those of you, I hope that you brought your own bug juice and you're ready to go. I've got my canteen and my new Learning Man mug all filled up and ready to go. Tomorrow marks Flipping Scary Stories, the first of one of our themes that we're exploring here at Learning Human. And then that's all about how to take something that might seem really daunting and haunting and thrilling and chilling, and how to make it a lot more manageable, which is often how innovative efforts start to scale. Then join us on Wednesday for Arts and Crafting Learning Experiences. We're going to be over in the Arts and Crafts shed, designing things and talking about ways to design things that keep students front and center. July 23rd, Thursday, is going to be asynchronized swimming. And that's going to be lots of conversation about tools and approaches to keep the learning and the connections alive in between those live moments. Friday, at the end of the week, July 24th, is going to be Tech Hacks from the Tool Shed. So for all you ed tech enthusiasts who are looking forward to upskilling and seeing and trying new tools, that day is all about you. And then we don't stop when the workday stops, because this is summer camp after all. So over the weekend, we're going to be engaged in some very exciting, relaxing, and cathartic nature walks. So join us in Verbella on Slack and Zoom for all of that. And then, of course, it wouldn't be camp without concluding with a kumbaya ceremony where we bring it all together. So one theme per day, but something that you could always rely on is the schedule. We start every day together in the mess hall. It is bring your own breakfast, unless you're lucky enough to sample some of the fare that Chef Lev has provided. So that's at Pacific time. You'll start at 7:30. Bring your coffee, your yogurt, whatever it is that you like, to the mess hall. It's going to be time to get together informally and banter. It's going to be emceed, of course. Tomorrow, it's going to be emceed by Brian Alexander. Some of you may know, our futurist friend. And then we're going to kick things off after the mess hall, after breakfast, with Around the Flagpole. And tomorrow we have the special honor of things being kicked off by President Crow at ASU, and the Around the Flagpole keynote and panel response has been orchestrated by our co-convener Workday. And then every day after the Around the Flagpole session, which starts at 8 a.m. Pacific, there are two breakout slots with tons of different concurrent breakout sessions running that cover a multitude of topics. And those take place at 9:15 and again at 10:15. And then every day later in the afternoon, if you're on Pacific time, we end the day with a plenary campfire. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about social justice and values-led change. And then we always have a social activity to cap off the night, because what's learning with friends without a lot of fun? So really looking forward to seeing you at any and all of these activities. Check the Learning Human website regularly and plan your schedule and choose your own adventure. There are 3 ways to join. I've hinted at Verbella, which is our immersive space. This is something that has been set up as ASU's enterprise solution, and you can actually wander around the ASU campus and the Learning Human campus in conference rooms in 3D with your avatar. You can join us here in Zoom like you are tonight, or you may be tuning in via ASU Live, which is more of a streaming option. So 3 different ways to participate, and every single activity has at least one of these buttons or more next to it, so you can join very, very quickly. So some of you are new and found us through Learning Human. Welcome. We're so happy you're here. But some of you have actually been with us for a while and are fellow campers and travelers. I teased that you'd get to know a little bit more about the organization or the initiative that's hosting Learning Human, and that is ASU's ShapingEDU initiative. ShapingEDU is a global community of practice for dreamers, doers, and drivers who are shaping the future of learning in the digital age. Very lofty vision. What started out in 2018, you could see from the picture here on the screen, with just 139 doer, dreamer, drivers, actually has materialized and grown over the past few years to now be thousands of dreamer, doer, drivers. But in 2018, when we weren't sure what we were yet, we just know that there needed to be something and someone collaboratively shaping the future of learning in the digital age. We got together in Scottsdale, Arizona on our SkySong Innovation Campus, and we decided collaboratively as a group that these 10 actions here on the screen and rendered by our art director, Karina Branson, really represent our roots and are evident in everything we do. So as you go through the 180 plus activities across Learning Human, at least one or more of these founding 10 actions is going to show up either as a call to action or as an underpinning of something that you're going to be learning, because it is our hope in everything that we're doing to recognize all forms of learning, to build constellations of innovation, to humanize learning, and so on and so forth. And that is our mission together at Learning Human. A little bit more about ShapingEDU and also where to learn more and how to join. And please be sure to use the Learning Human hashtag so we can archive and share all the best interactions from the week. Another thing to know is Learning Human isn't the only event we do. We have an annual Unconference. And so if you are signed up for Learning Human, welcome to the family. You're going to be hearing a lot more from us. So what is Learning Human beyond just a really awesome conference supported by ShapingEDU? Well, at our core, we are very action oriented. So when we get together, it's always with the caveat that we need to create something. We need to produce something that actually tangibly, concretely moves the field forward. So here's just a smattering, just an example of some of the collaborative projects we've done together throughout the past couple of years. Some of our innovators in residence, Maya Georgieva, Emery Craig, got together and collaborated on the Hummersive Learning Project, which was an actionable exploration of the intersection between humanity and immersive learning. Another innovator in residence with us, Nancy Rubin, is just wrapping up the Applying Artificial Intelligence to Understand the Student Debt Crisis. We've built together effective communities of practice guides, frameworks for better stakeholder inclusion in the technology planning process, and an active learning in the digital realms capability maturity model. What else will we build over the next week together? I cannot wait to see. In the meantime, for those of you who have been asking, yes, a lot of the sessions at Learning Human will be recorded. Make sure you're subscribed to the ShapingEDU channel on YouTube to catch up with recordings as we've prepared them, and of course, past recordings that have all been leading up to this moment. A couple things that I just want to share because Learning Human is very much a come as you are, bring your most authentic self experience. But I just want to make everyone aware that while this is very much a free form week and a time to experiment and play, that does not relinquish us from our responsibilities to each other as good humans and as respectful humans. So I just want to make sure this is also up on our website, just to remind everyone to be respectful. The field of education is a lightning rod, as we know, for tons of debates, but we need to be respectful at our core with how we engage with each other, and we need to listen with the goal of openness and compassionate understanding, even if we're not starting from the same place. Let's try to be empathetic towards each other. You never know what's going on under the surface of any human being or exactly the context that someone's coming from. So when we share our ideas, recognize that when we're sharing, it's also part of our responsibility to make sure that what we're doing is creating and adding to a safe space for people. And finally, be free. Our Chief Culture Officer will explain a little bit more about this in a moment, but feel free to navigate through the activities as you wish. So if something isn't working for you, move on to the next one that resonates more with you. And finally, just some guiding tenets for this community as we kind of frame this mindset of being a camper, being a counselor, something that we very rarely get to do as education professionals. We're all here representing an affiliation. Many of us multiple affiliations in a sense, but here we value the individual and your unique unicorn skill sets and contributions. We're also learners first. There's going to be a ton of students joining us tonight and throughout the activities, leading around the flagpole and other panel sessions. First and foremost, everything we do is about making the learning experience better for learners. And guess what? We're learners too. And then finally, I mentioned our founding initiative, ShapingEDU, is founded around dreaming, doing, and driving. And that's really the pinnacle of everything we do. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Christine and Terry for some cultural notes for the event. Thank you so much.
Welcome, everybody. This is an amazing event to have virtually. My roots in camp go back to Girl Scout camp, and some of the values that Sam was sharing, some of the tenets really resonate with me, because the main one as a Girl Scout is be a sister to every other Girl Scout. So I would invite us to be sisters and brothers to each other while we're here. I think it makes it a lot more fun and safe for all of us. So I am joined today by my friend and colleague, Terry Pipe. Terry, you want to wave at everybody? And Seth, I wonder if there's a way to turn it to this, that's my problem, speaker view. Okay. So we really see this time that we're in, both for Learning Human and for all of the things that we're doing across the world in the learning space, as such an important time in human history. There's this unprecedented volume and velocity of change. And in some ways, it's really prompting us to be more present as individuals and to be more present collectively. And there are ways to practice that Terry will be able to share with you in a minute. When we're present, it helps us to be grounded, even in this virtual camp kind of a setting. And it helps us be attuned to those subtle signals that tell us what's next and what's trying to get created and what we're trying to learn together. And when it's time to act, and when it's time to reflect. Terry, would you like to share anything?
Thank you so much, Christine. Well, first of all, thank you for being here and being part of this community. Welcome, campers. I think this is just a fantastic way to have dialogue and shape community and culture together. As Christine said, it's really a moment in history right now where we have the chance to shape our culture and our society and our future. And that starts, in my view, with inside. So transformation from the inside out. And we'll be talking a bit and practicing that, because we can talk about it in lots of different ways. And that gets into our academic brains, and that's fine. But until we really practice it experientially, that's really where the change happens. So Christine, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Terry, do you want to introduce yourself in terms of what your background is and kind of why you're here with me?
Sure, thank you for that. So my name is Dr. Terry Pipe, and I'm ASU's Chief Wellbeing Officer and the founding director of ASU's Center for Mindfulness, Compassion, and Resilience. And Christine and I have had many amazing conversations. We think they're amazing. We hope to sort of have a public conversation in front of you and with you tonight. One of the reasons that I'm here is this idea of mindfulness, of being present and focused, is something that at ASU we talk about in a way that should be accessible to all. So understanding that we didn't invent mindfulness, we think about mindfulness as being focused and present, and that is a skill set and a capacity that all of us have, regardless of our backgrounds, our cultures, our belief system or our non-belief system. Mindfulness and compassion are capacities within each of us. And you already have the words, you already have the experience and the attitudes and the ways of being that you need in order to be mindfulness. And many of you have practiced mindfulness in your life, whether you've thought of it or not in those words, whether you've listened to an amazing piece of music or made music, whether you've been in nature, whether you've been in a conversation that you're really, really engrossed in. Those are all ways of being mindful. And when we engage that kind of focus and presence, not only for the present moment, we sort of lean into the future. We create a momentum in this moment for what might be the potential for the next moment. So that's why I'm here. I'm excited that all of you are here with us and look forward to co-creating this experience.
Thanks, Terry. There's a way that I tend to think about organizational culture that I think is relevant to what's happening here, because this group will naturally co-create the culture that's meant to be the most supportive and the most generative for everybody that's working and playing at Learning Human. So one of the elements of organizational culture is soul. So if you think about the soul of a system, any kind of learning system, or any system really, those are the things that give people a sense of what the purpose is, and it permeates absolutely everything that is happening there. And often our principles arise from that kind of soul place. And then the culture also has an ego and a personality. You may have noticed that Lev has a bit of a personality. So our culture tends to be full of fun and play and innovation. And the ego is really in service to the soul of the organization, and is wanting to create what's best, what's in the highest good for each and all. And there are three things that I think can really help us when we're trying to connect those two parts of ourselves. One is presence, as we've already talked about, being personally present, being collectively present. When two or more people are present and they are connected to each other, a really remarkable thing begins to happen, where there's an opening that gets created, where something new starts to get born. And I do believe in the power of the collective, and I do think that's why we're all here at this moment. So Terry, what are some of the practices that help us to be present?
Sure, thank you. So the first skill that we often lean on is breathing, and all of you are doing that, I trust, right now. So I'd like to just guide you, and this won't be a breath meditation. If any of you have been in our workshops or come to our YouTube sessions, you know that we run through a lot of different practices. But the practice I thought that might be helpful tonight is for us to visit our person and the way that we would like to shape our future. So to get started, I just want you to get present in your body. So just really not only just thinking about where you are and how you're sitting or however you're postured, but really engage your senses and your mind and fully get present. And yes, you might take a deep breath or use your senses to look around you. And then where I'd like you to head is, often presence and focus are what we think about as mindfulness. But there's also two attitudes of mindfulness that I think would be fun to play with tonight. And those are intention and attention. So right now, with your embodied self and thinking about how you are a leader, wherever you sit in the organization or in your family or in your community, you are a leader of yourself, and that can't help but influence those around you. So from that vantage point, with your attention and intention, create a more desired future. So think about your own personal self and think about yourself into the future, whether that's in the next hour or week or year. Really engage all of your imagination in what does that look like for you? How do you experience that? A more preferred future. Okay, so having that in mind, we're going to go pretty quickly. You could do this for minutes or hours if you want to. You could journal about this, but we're going to move quickly. So mindfully and quickly. So from that vantage point, now think about how, not only think, but experience, how would you like your work to be? Whatever that work is in the world. And that might be your job, or it might be things that you do in your community. You define that. How would your work be more preferred in your future? Bring all of your attention and your intention to that. So not just, not writing a strategic plan, not writing goals, but embodying, imagining, what would your work look like in the most ideal and optimized way, life? Okay? So you've moved from yourself to your work. Now let's move to society. Take another deep breath, get yourself engaged, and really imagine what it might look like to live in a compassionate, resilient, preferred society. We have to imagine it in order to create it. We have to imagine it in order to move into it. And so from this sense of mindfulness, heartfulness, compassion, and consciousness, we've moved from the person to the family, the collective, the community, society, through your work. Work is love made visible. And so thinking about all of these things is very interconnected. So thank you. That is your practice, and that is also your homework. So as you go away from the campfire tonight, I hope that you continue to think about that a bit, not only with your head, but with all of who you are. Christine?
Yeah, thanks. So I have a question for you, Terry. What do you think the relationship is between these kinds of practices and the culture that gets created?
So what we pay attention to grows. You can think about that back in your own life. The things that you really attended to grew. And so when we figure out what we have to give to a situation, what our personal gifts are, and each of you has a gift that is unique to you. When you figure that out, when you spend enough time with yourself intentionally to figure that out, then you are free, and actually not only free, but in my view, have the responsibility to give that gift in a way that is intentional and with attention and presence. So to me, bringing mindfulness and a presence to yourself, once we start to practice that and build that skill set within ourselves, it's very natural that it flows over to other people and eventually to our society. And you think about a tipping point, if each of us do that enough, then it really will create a momentum, not only in small places, but in large places. And when I think about, all of the people that are engaged here in Learning Human, if each of us takes that responsibility on intentionally to bring a bit more awareness, compassion, and resilience to the world, I have a lot of confidence and optimism. I'm already seeing it happen.
Thanks, Terry. So I would like to invite all of you who are in camp with us at this point to share a bit about what you could see for yourself, your preferred future. It could be part of the work, part of the societal, personal, any of those. And also, if you have any reflective practices, what are those?
And Christine, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So when you think about how we influence culture, where do you see opportunities to expand what is possible from a consciousness perspective?
One of the things that we've been working on in the University Technology Office is trying to bring beginner's mind to everything that we do. Another way to say that is to be really agile, to constantly have an agile mindset and be really open to what needs to stay and what needs to go, how we need to reconfigure things. So I'd say that's one thing, is beginner's mind. And then this collective experience that we have is powerful because it reminds us that we're all connected all the time. And whether we're consciously aware of it or not, that's just a given. We know that we're in this huge web of connection. I think the virtual worlds are such a good demonstration of that, because somehow we can move from seeing each other face to face like you and I are doing right now. And then if you get in Verbella and start to play around with your avatar, it's like, wow, I jumped from one reality to another and we're still connected. And I do believe in collective wisdom. And that's what I believe we're here for with learning human. So Sam, I'm going to turn it back over to you whenever you're ready, unless we want to go on a little bit longer on the comments in the chat.
Let's let the comments carry on. You know, again, I think these are very important moments, especially for us this evening, or in the case of my friend and colleague Tula Dlamini in South Africa. Good morning to you, my friend. Hope you're waking up to an early morning meditation. And I can see friends and colleagues from actually all over the world, and I'm thrilled and that you're here. And I see a lot of noble activity here. For those of you who know me and why I chose to be the camp chef this week, I like to combine, yes, gardening and traveling, and I try to do more meditation with help from Christine. But I also like to enjoy a beverage. So if you're with me tonight, you are welcome to join me. And you can also share in the chat, now that we have all of these very important reflective insights, also what you're drinking this evening, as the theme of food will continue throughout the week. And with food comes good drink.
And speaking of the comments that are pouring through the chat right now, there is so many ways to engage with each other at Learning Human, within and outside of these live experiences. Here we are all together. There's actually a number of colleagues and change makers tuning in from the streaming service ASU Live. And I just came back from the sandy beaches of the Learning Human campus in Verbella. But something else to note is there's a vibrant Slack workspace where all campers have been dropped off by the camp bus. So everyone is in there right now. And there's actually some navigating to do to kind of get to know the Slack workspace. So I'm hoping just to briefly turn things over to Lara and Aaron to share a little bit about how to engage and continue to share these comments.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Lara Geringer. I am your camp director this week. You can find me on Slack and email, and of course, all these synchronous engagement opportunities. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. My partner in Camp Fun, Aaron, and I would love to share a couple quick notes with you. And I'm going to share my screen real quick and we'll hop over to the Learning Human website. Erin, do you want to take us through the website a little bit?
Absolutely. So I am Erin Morrow. I am the camp program director for you this week, here to help in any way. We have pages set for every day. It will tell you what's going on, how to get there, a little more detail so that you know, what is this really about? Title can tell you something, but really, you need to know more details, and that's great. And if there's more than one way to get in, it's noted on there, and it's a quick, easy click. All the titles are linked to the Zoom session, so you can go right in. There is a slight registration so that we know who's coming in, but once you get in, to the Zoom, like the one you go in today, if you're here with us, you don't have to do it again. You're already in. You're registered, you're set up, and so tomorrow morning, you can just log right in and you're good to go. It's always, like I said, there's always also ASU Live as well as Verbella. That's pretty much how the whole week goes. You go through them. There's weekend activities on top of that.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, so we've got a really exciting program with lots of wonderful camp counselors. And as you're going through camp, we have the opportunity to earn some fun camp badges. So we're using Badger to offer digital credentials for learning human activities this week. There's 7 different little patches you can earn, little sub badges. And then if you collect enough of them, you get this fun learning human badge here. So you earn badges by attending sessions, by joining in week-long projects like the Learning Artist Project that we'll hear a little bit more about later, and doing a scavenger hunt in Verbella. So you can find out all about these on our Learning Human website and earn those credentials. Wear them proudly around the internet. We also want to share a little bit about engaging in Slack. So as Erin mentioned, there are several ways to engage this week. And one of the key ways for synchronous and asynchronous engagement is our Slack workspace. As a registrant, you should have all received an invitation to join the ShapingEDU Slack workspace. If you have trouble accessing it, please don't hesitate to email me. We'll get it sorted out. Because we have so many people registered and so many topics to talk about, I really encourage you to thread conversations. So you'll see that there's a little thought bubble, a little speech bubble on comments in Slack. I encourage you to click it and add your comments in a thread, just so we can group topics by theme, group conversations that belong together. I also encourage you to tag your fellow campers, tag camp counselors if you have questions, and that will draw their attention to your specific comment, your specific thread. We have 4 Learning Human channels and then 1 ShapingEDU channel that I forgot to put on this list. We're using the flagpole for everything related to learning. We're using the mess hall for all our social activities, our collective creating, things like the opening reception that we're in right now, the Zoom Prov session coming on Wednesday. We have a lot of collective knowledge and a lot of collective resources. And so this Down by the Docks is a place where I encourage you to share resources, ideas, courses, things that you want your fellow participants to know that might be useful to them in their own work. And then we have this camp office. If you have questions about the event, if you are struggling in one of the platforms, please reach out to the event team in the camp office. Or if you can't find the camp office and that's the problem, tag us in one of the other channels. We'll be happy to help. We also have a constellations channel, which I know many of you have been in there introducing yourselves. This is our long-term ShapingEDU community channel. So it's sort of a bridge between Learning Human and ShapingEDU. It's a little strange to call it a bridge because they're sort of one and the same, but it's a persistent, long-lasting channel. So another place to introduce yourself if you choose. Erin, what if we have questions?
Well, other than the amazing Slack channel that you just mentioned, the camp office, where we'll be hanging out all day long, waiting to answer any questions. In Zoom, after the plenary sessions between 9 and 11, when everyone is off in their breakout sessions, if you have a question or get lost, you can always come back to this plenary link. I will be here the whole time, and I will help direct you wherever you need to go, answer questions. And then the most fun option is Verbella. There's a camp desk right when you enter to learn more about whatever they need to do there. And let me hand it over to Heather and Dan, who can tell you everything you need to know about Verbella.
Okay. Hey, Orion. Hey, Dan, what are we all doing here? We should be at Learning Man. We're supposed to be at the camp. Come on, let's go. Let's get on our way. Let's go. We got to get out of here. All right. I'm using my arrow keys to move around and move my avatar around and move through the campus. But I want to get to Learning Man quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up in my upper left-hand menu, and I'm going to go to, and I'm going to go to the campus locations, and I'm going to go to the welcome area and figure out where I'm supposed to be right now.
All right, see you there.
See ya.
So where am I supposed to go at the camp desk? Do you know where I'm supposed to go? Oh, here's the helper. Elizabeth just said that we need to go to the beach, but I don't know how to get to the beach. Come on, let's take a walk and run around and see where this beach is. Come on, Dan, come on.
Slow down, Heather, you're too fast.
Oh, but do you want me to walk instead of run? But I love running. Running's the best. I don't get out of shape. I don't get out of breath when I run in Verbella, unlike when I run at home. I get out of breath.
Running in Verbella is easy as hit and shift.
Look, here's the camp notice board. It's right past the Welcome Center. Let's see if we can find where this event is. Here is today's, ooh, there's a board for today's events. It's the welcome. Let's go look at it. I'm gonna click on the upper little magnifying glass with the plus and scroll down so that I can see where this event is happening. Let's see, the welcome. Looks like we need to go to the beach. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'm gonna go to, and I'm gonna campus locations. Oh, there's a flagpole. Did you know there was a flagpole? I'm gonna jump to the flagpole. Let's go there
See you
first.
there.
Whoa, look at this place. How about instead of going to the beach, we play a game of soccer? Where's the soccer ball? Has anybody seen it? Is there a ball anywhere? Dan, you kicked a goal earlier. I think it disappeared. I guess we'll have to find it later. All right, come on, let's go to the beach. I'm gonna hit shift and run. Uh-oh, I tried to run off the edge. Too bad it won't let me do that.
Hey, check out all these people, Heather.
Whoa, what are all these people? Well, there's the campfires. Look, they're looking at me, looking at them. That's weird. Oh man, look at how pretty it is out here. Look, there's a speedboat. Can you drive the speedboat?
Let's try
Dan?
it. Wait
Orion?
for me, I'm catching you up.
Hopping in right now.
Oh man.
Look at this.
All right, I'm driving. Hop in.
Oh man, I'm good. I'm gonna stay here. Why don't you two go off? I'm gonna go check out the beach. Oh
Okay,
man, they're
see you
doing
later.
racing on the beach. I'll have to try that later. All right, so I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna go back in and look at everyone. Hi everyone. I'm coming in, I'm seeing all of you. I'm gonna turn around and wave at everyone. Can everyone in Verbella wave back at me? Oh, look at that. I got a bunch of people waving. If I click on my name, there's a bunch of things I can. Look, I can wave. I can show that I'm thinking. I can even do the samba. All right. Well, I hope to see all of you in Verbella. I hope you all go and explore the campus and that we all see you in avatar form and in human form soon. Thanks all.
Off from the rocks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Orion. Let's see. Now it is time to talk a little bit about learning artists. So, hey, Karina Branson, our resident graphic facilitator and learning artist.
Hello, so good to see everybody. Awesome. So we have so many wonderful ways to engage artistically during Learning Man. And some of them are me and some of them are going to be you. So we're going to need your help to create a gallery of the windows to the future of learning. So I'm going to be doing what I love to do, which is graphic recording many of these sessions. I'm going to do a quick camera swap so you can see what I've been up to while we've been framing Learning Man. Boom, there it is. And these will be uploaded and shared both in Verbella and on the Learning Human website. So under Learning Human, there's a Learning Artist tab, and that's where you'll be able to check in to see all of the stuff I've been working on, as well as upload your own pieces of art for Windows to the Future of Learning. Now, what the heck is that? Well, we would love for you to express creatively throughout the course of the week, and whether that's drawing digitally or on paper or sculpting or creating a Photoshop masterpiece, which we're going to dive into in a little bit. Any sort of way that you want to express yourself. It could be a song. It could be a dance. It could be a dance in Verbella. That would be so cool. We want to know, what is your vision for the future of learning? What do you think it's going to look like? What should it look like? What kinds of things will be happening, feeling? Who's going to be there? Everything. So there's no limits. We will be checking in to make sure that everything is looking like that. Yes, that's a response to Windows to the Future of Learning. And there will be places both on that Learning Artist tab and in Verbella in the mess hall. There's going to be a tab open so that you can go and scroll through the gallery and see different submissions. So be sure to check in there and be sure to create something if that feels like it would be fun and exciting for you, even if it's just pushing the envelope a little bit. That's what we're all about. If you have questions, I would love to support you. Although those of you who are ShapingEDU veterans know I'm not going to do all the drawing for you, but I'll give you tips. What am I missing, Laura?
I think that's it. We're going to have such fun creating together this week. And we're actually going to do a little bit of creative play this evening. So I'd love to turn it over to Joseph for our first activity.
All right, so this is a presentation around Photoshop Tenets and around different activities that you can do, things you can think about when doing collaborative creative exercises, right? Using Photoshop or, you know, as you'll see in a bit, some additional bits and pieces. So let's have a look here. And there we go. So we are doing this with collaboration with Adobe. And tonight there is myself and Melissa Arnold, and we are both sort of taking on this session. She's gonna be supporting and doing some additional things inside of Slack and in Zoom. So to send off some particular bits and pieces that you might wanna gather when we get to that point. If you don't have any assets yourself, if you wanna join in on this, keep an eye toward that, right? All right. So, let's see here. And I've got two screens going on here. So you'll see me like looking over here and looking over there. I'm just kind of keeping track of the slides and the chat and everything that's going on. So feel free to, you know, pop questions into the chat as we go through this. And either myself or Melissa will address your different questions, right? So Photoshop. Right? I mean, everybody knows what Photoshop is, and I probably don't need to get into it too much, but it's basically image composition and manipulation. And that's what Photoshop Tennis is too. It's being able to perform a collaboration inside of Photoshop, just passing off, you know, imagery back and forth and adding a little bit to it or changing some aspect of it when you pass it off to the next person. So there's lots of different activities like this. You'll sometimes see it seen as termed as layer tennis, because sometimes people produce, you know, entire PSD files or Photoshop documents, and they pass those back and forth, and everybody like adds a layer. Or you can do something like You can use Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint. There's all sorts of ways to do it. And you just sort of build upon one another's creative efforts, right? So there's Photoshop for desktop, and there's also Photoshop for iPad. So if you don't have your desktop machine with Photoshop on it, you can always use Photoshop for iPad as well. And Photoshop for iPad is actually like the exact same file format that's used on the desktop. When you create something on iPad, it syncs to the cloud, and you can open it up on your desktop, work on it there, then open it back up later in the day inside of your iPad if you do have one. And you can go back and forth like that pretty seamlessly because it is the same file format. Adobe Illustrator, if you might know, received cloud document capabilities as well last month rather, in June. And other applications like XD and so forth have had cloud capability for some time. So Photoshop Tennis, like how do you actually do this? Basically, you just start off with a photo, and it's good to start off with a photo that's like a landscape or a cityscape or something of that nature, something that's expansive that can be built upon, right? So one person starts it off, and then they basically just pass it along to the next person, and that person adds a layer to it. So you can see in this example here, they've added a little cityscape in the background. And then they render that, pass it along to the previous person or a new person. However you do it, you can have groups of 2 people just going back and forth, just like tennis, or you can do something that's more expansive, right? It's up to you. But the idea is, you're relaying this stuff back and forth. Everybody's contributing to it in some way and being creative. So there are a couple things we're going to go over inside of Photoshop. And before we get into Photoshop, I want to kind of go over these things just as ideas, right? So the first thing to know is layers. If you've never used Photoshop before, Photoshop work is highly dependent on layers. That's how you can composite an image together. So everybody, when you open up an image inside of Photoshop, and you want to add something like the moon or a kitty or flames or a spider or something like that, you would open that up in its own layer, and then you'd be able to manipulate that completely separate from the layers below it, right? So each edition should be its own layer. And the good thing about this is it's very organized. It allows fine manipulation across layers, and you can do things like masking and selections on layers, which we'll see momentarily. Additionally, when you create masks, you're probably going to want to create selections first. And Photoshop definitely has a number of different selection tools that you can use. So one of the new ones is the object selection tool. If you're using the newest version of Photoshop, you're able to actually just drag a rectangular marquee using this tool around an object in a photo. And this is a simplistic idea here, an example. We've got the moon on a black background, right? The thing is, you don't necessarily even need to have something so pure, right? You can have something that is a more complicated background. And what happens is when you use this tool, Photoshop goes out into the AI that's hosted by Adobe called Adobe Sensei. And it goes through and compares the photograph and the pixels you selected and all this other stuff with additional things in its database to try to figure out what is the object you're trying to select. It then brings it back with that selection, and you're able to, at that point, mask it out and do all sorts of additional things to it. The last thing you need to know when you're doing Photoshop Tennis is how to export. So you just use File, Export As, and you can choose whether you want to export it as a flattened JPEG or a PNG file, or even a GIF if you want to. GIFs are a little weird. They have a very limited color palette, so I'd stick with JPEG or PNG. I do mention GIF just because it is available. But JPEG and PNG both have vastly more depth to the color that you're able to use, right? So talking about where do you get these different photos from in order to actually, start this off, right? So to start it off, obviously, I mean, you can play it by yourself. It is kind of like solitaire in a way, where you open up a photograph and then you're like, oh, hey, what do I want to add to this photo? So you could add something additional to the photo and keep building upon it. And that's how image compositions are made, of course. But it's more fun when you're doing it with somebody else. So, you can get a partner or maybe even two partners and just, pass it along back and forth across different people. And then when you get it back, it's kind of like a fun surprise. It's like, well, what did, this person add to my initial photo? And you can see like how far to take it, right? But to grab the initial photos or even photos that you might want to use in addition to your initial photos, we do have a Google Drive link, and we're going to post that inside of Slack that you'll be able to go through and gather some stuff from Unsplash. And there's both like starter background images in there and also some selected images where you'd be able to easily grab out portions or objects or creatures from the images and be able to then use them inside of your composition. Some additional things you might want to look at. There's always Adobe Stock. Of course, Adobe Stock is not free. You have to use credits to actually purchase stock assets. But there are free ones too that are completely royalty free. It's free to use, wherever you want, such as Unsplash, Pixabay. And of course, any personal photographs that you have can also be used for these sorts of things. Lastly, I want to mention Photoshop Mix. This is an application that you can use on your mobile device. So if you don't have, something on your iPad, if your hardware isn't compatible with full-blown Photoshop in the iPad, you can always use Photoshop Mix in order to do, these multi-layer Photoshop compositions as well. So you can always fall back to that if you can't use full-blown Photoshop. All right. So what I'm going to do now is pop into Photoshop itself. And here's Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and actually show how to start one of these things out and show those 3 different points, like the use of layers, the use of the object selection tools, and also how to export, right? So anybody coming to this is going to know those 3 things, even if you've never touched Photoshop before, and you'll be able to do this. So I have actually grabbed some content already. And the first thing I've got is this little cityscape. I'm going to drag it directly into Photoshop here. And it's going to open up as a new Photoshop document for me. You can see it's this nice cityscape. Now, in terms of layers, I have over here my background layer. Whenever you first open up something inside of Photoshop, when you're dragging in a JPEG or a PNG file or something like this, it's going to open it up as a background layer, and it's automatically going to be locked and named background. So this is like a normal thing inside of Photoshop. So what I want to do is grab some additional content. So let's say this is my first pitch here, or serve or whatever. So I'm just going to name this 001 and hit OK. And what we're going to do is pull in an additional thing here. Now, what I want to do maybe is grab another photo. And this photo right here, as you can see, is a crescent moon. So I can, as I drag this into the Photoshop workspace, I can drag it around, reposition it. I can even change its size. I can scale it from these little anchor points here. So let's place it somewhere that makes sense, maybe up in the corner here. There we go. Of course, it looks terrible right now. It doesn't look realistic at all. So we need to look toward our different selection tools. So right along here in our toolbar, this is where we're going to find all the different tools. And right here, we can find our quick selection tool, our magic wand tool, and the new object selection tool. So let's go ahead and choose that object selection tool. And as mentioned, I can just drag a selection rectangle across that, just click and drag. And what's going to happen is it goes up into the cloud and figures out exactly what we're looking at here. I can use my navigator to kind of zoom in. and see if it did a good job or not. And if I wanted to, I could, of course, go ahead and make some adjustments on this. So if I go to select and mask, I can make those adjustments. But this actually works pretty good. All I need to do once I have a selection like this, and I want to mask it, is down below in my layers panel right here, is this little icon. It looks like a piece of paper with a dot cut out of it. That's going to automatically mask my content there. So I'm zoomed in way far right now. And when I zoom back out, there we go. And one of the things with Photoshop Tenets is, you don't have to be super realistic with it. So, you can be silly with it. And right here, what we've got is, of course, it obviously doesn't look all that integrated quite yet. There are a number of tools inside of Photoshop you can use to fix that. Probably the easiest one for something like this is to use opacity. Just bring it down a little bit. We could also use additional adjustment tools down here, but for this demonstration, it's not something really to get into. Just know they're down there, and if you want to explore further, that's where they are. So I want to add some additional things here. One thing I want to grab is I've got a really big spider, and I want the spider to be dominating the city. So once again, I can choose my object selection tool from the tools panel. And again, this is a much more complicated background than what we had before, but it does a pretty good job at grabbing it. Now, if I wanted to, I could do some adjustments in here, going to select and mask. So let's go ahead and just tweak that a little bit right here. And what I'm going to do is just have this guy on layers so I can see a preview of what I'm looking at. And I can use this little tool right here inside of Select and Mask, which is the Refine Edge Brush tool. And from there, I can then go ahead. Let's make this brush a little bigger. You can, of course, change that right there. And you can also use your keyboard to do this. So the little brackets. What you can do is brush in some of this stuff. This is really meant for hair, so it's not working too well on his spidery antennas, but it's okay because spiders are kind of hairy too. So you can see how it's adding a little bit more to that. And I'm doing it super quick here. You'd probably want to zoom in a little bit and play with it a bit more. But I'm getting some of his little spidery hairs in there, right? Just by using this little tool. And then if I look down at the bottom here, hit OK. There we go. Let's go ahead and make this a mask. And there's our spider, right? So we can move him over here, wherever we want. And maybe the last thing I'll put in here are some flames. So let's drag that in there. We've got our flames. And initially, whenever you drag in stuff inside of Photoshop, you can, of course, scale it, reposition it, anything you want before you hit this little check mark up here, and that's going to position it. And even after you do that, you can still move it around. You can still scale it, all that stuff. So I think what I'm going to do here is just change the blend mode on this particular layer. And I don't know what I'm going to change it to. Well, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to move that down. So you'll notice that layers, of course, stack, right? So I've got my spider. I want him to be in front. So I can move these different layers around by clicking and dragging. And there we go. So this is a good example of, something you could do. It looks like he's running away from the city, like he knows what he's done, right? So as soon as we're done this, so ideally, I'm doing all this myself, but, ideally you'd be passing this back and forth to somebody else. Somebody would add the spider, then you'd add the flames, the next person would add something else. So when you're actually finished, or you want to bring that off to someone, you can always go and export it as something they can use. So not everybody, of course, can use PSD files. So a Photoshop document is a PSD file, and that's one way of managing this sort of thing. However, if you want to be able to add this to a slideshow or something like that to show the progression of everything, you could always go File, Export, And if you choose export as, it's going to give you a little dialog that lets you choose a number of different things here. And really the basics you need to know here is it gives you a little preview, right? Is you need to know, what do you want to export it as? Do you want to export it as a JPEG file or a PNG file or some other file type? And mostly for photographic imagery, you're probably going to just want to use JPEG if it's not for anything special, right? The quality, 100% is a bit much. You can always take that down to like 84%. This is the compression that a JPEG uses to, compress the data inside of it. And it is lossy compression, so you can't bring that back. So you want to keep it high enough that it's not too terrible. If I bring this down to like 0%, it's going to be awful, right? And then the image size, this is a pretty large image. I've got my width and my height. Pretty large. I'm going to take that down. Something like Photoshop Tennis, let's make it 2000 in width. And there we go. It's still going to look great. It's still going to be pretty big. And then we can just hit export. And that's going to export the flattened image for us. We can pass it on to the next person, and they'll be able to add something else using a layer. So just to go back and reiterate the 3 things that we're looking at in Photoshop if you are playing Photoshop Tennis. Number 1 is actual layer management. So you can see here, each one of these different objects is on its own separate layer. So this is a really good way to work. It's very efficient, and you can do specific things with each layer, like masking, as we've seen. You don't have to, of course. You could use other things too. As mentioned, we do have the quick selection tool, the magic wand tool. You can always use those to remove backgrounds and things like that. So like if I wanted to remove the background from this initial image, I could go in here with the quick selection tool and making that brush a little bit bigger. It's a lot bigger. You can go ahead and make that selection, hit delete, and there we go, right? Now I can bring this fire behind the cityscape, and I can keep the moon up there, and I can bring back our little tarantula, right? So there's all sorts of ways to deal with stuff inside of Photoshop like this. It's like super, super creative. So layers, that's the one thing. The selection tools, that's another thing. And then being able to export. Those are the 3 things you actually, need to use to be able to play Photoshop Tennis. And, this works across different versions of Photoshop. So, if you're using a 10-year-old version of Photoshop, you can still do this stuff. You don't have to have the latest version. Also, if you're using it on your iPad, even though it's on a mobile device, it's still Photoshop. It'll still be able to use layers and selection tools and things of that nature. And you can still export stuff. So it's pretty flexible in terms of what we're looking at for Photoshop Tennis. So a couple of additional things. If I go to my web browser here, a spider is looking right at you. Let's see that comment. Going to, let's see, not there. There we go. So we do have a number of starter photos here, and these photographs have been selected, as an option, right? So you don't have to start with one of these if you want to participate in Photoshop Tennis. You can always use your own photos. You can always go off to Unsplash and look for specific things that you might want. But here are a couple of things, like cute little kittens that you can use to do an object selection. Make the kitten be in charge of the city, right? You can have a full moon instead of the crescent moon, or you could use a different type of spider. I've also got some limbs here. So a number of different limbs. These are always interesting because you can have somebody holding the kitten, right? Or holding the moon or something like that. So lots of good starter files here. The nice thing about these is that these are going to be really easy to perform object selection upon. So you can imagine how easy it is to just remove the background from this particular object and just use these arms and these hands in different ways inside of your composition, right? So we've also got a couple of examples to show. So this particular one is something that we created this morning, or started yesterday, I guess. It finished this morning. And this is a Photoshop Tennis example that's using Google Slides. So basically what we did here is we would each bring in, our own particular layer for Photoshop Tennis inside of Photoshop. And then we would render that out and place it on a slide. And the nice thing about this is you can see the progression of the game, right? Of the collaboration. So here we started with the Eiffel Tower. It's just a plain photo. Nothing's been done to it yet. This next one, I actually did this. I took a photograph of some lightning and I placed that in the background. So I did a replace background sort of thing. And I also did some color matching on the original image so that it looks like it's at the same time of day and with the same sort of, ethereal events going on in the atmosphere, right? So the next person actually took this as a framing device. So they took a lens and they framed what I had created inside of that lens. Somebody took it a little further and placed it on, that looks like a really old cathode ray tube. And then the next person took that and doubled it up and made it into some spectacles for this guy. And then we added some additional stuff here and actually brought the Eiffel Tower back, which is interesting. So everything comes full circle in these things sometimes, right? So that's just an example. There are additional examples, of course, inside of the folder that's been shared. So that folder is going to have the starter photos, and you've got some other stuff too. Also, just to mention, there is this Spark page here, and I'll share it in the chat as well. But this details everything that is sort of Adobe focused during Learning Human. So here's the Photoshop Tennis stuff and what we're doing right now, right? But it's got the whole schedule here and it's got all that information. Let me pop this into the chat if it's not there quite yet, so that you can look at more information about that stuff. And let's pop back to our slides now. Inside, I've got so many windows open here. There we go. So Photoshop Mix, could of course use. So closing out, we're thinking about like, where do you take this, right? Because Photoshop Tennis itself, it's a pretty simple way to do things. Just like moving things back and forth between people and just being creative in a collaborative way like that. There are additional mechanisms that you can use, additional workflows that have actually been used for like a long, long time. And these things have evolved over time to include additional media. So what I'm thinking of here is the exquisite corpse, right? So how many people have collaborated inside of exquisite corpse projects in the past? Just mention it in the chat, just to get an idea of like, who's familiar with the exquisite corpse? Because it's weird, like some people are and some people aren't. And I kind of wonder if it's like based on your background, like if you've taken more kind of art classes, more than like digital manipulative sort of classes, right? So it looks like a lot of people haven't heard of it. So I'll explain it. An exquisite corpse is basically, it takes something like Photoshop Tennis to the next level, right? So with an exquisite corpse, basically you can see on this particular version here, like somebody started with this right here. And I think you can all see my cursor. It's basically the top fourth of this page. And it used to be used, just as, a couple people sitting around in a cafe, they're drinking their wine or whatever. And, they've got a piece of paper, they got a pen, and hey, let's, do some creative stuff, right? So somebody would draw the initial panel of this, which in this case is the girl's head or the doll's head or however you want to interpret that. And then what they do is they fold it in such a way that most of the actual image that was produced is obscured from the next person. And the other people that, are participating in the exquisite corpse, they don't actually know what's being done. They're not watching the person actually draw out the initial portion, right? They're just over on the side talking to them among themselves. But the initial guy, he's over here and drawing out whatever. So when he or she is finished, fold it over, but you leave like a little bit at the bottom, right? You leave just the smallest bit where the next person, they don't know what you drew, but they have an idea of sort of where to start, right? So their interpretation of the bottom part of what was drawn before, compels them to, draw something else. So as you can see here in this version, the person drew like this weird squiggly doodad, right? And this right here is probably the portion as it was folded over again to pass to the third person. This is exactly what they would see. It's just that little piece, and they have to interpret that, and they create something in their panel, fold it over again, hand it off to the last person, and then the last person creates it. And then, of course, when you're finished, you unfold it and you look at it, and everybody is like, wow, that's insane, So it's an awesome creative activity that you can do, even just in like 30 minutes, And this is the traditional way to do it. But you can, of course, always do it with Photoshop, right? So if you did it inside of Photoshop, you would basically create like a 3,000 by 800 canvas. And, the person who starts would, use Photoshop or Adobe Fresco to actually create that and be able to pass that on to somebody else. They only pass along that last little bit. So as I mentioned here, so there's different approaches to doing something like this. So with an exquisite corpse, you can use all sorts of media to do this. Drawing and imagery is what we've been talking about. So you can use Adobe Fresco, which is available as a drawing and painting application on the iPad or on Microsoft Surfaces. It's on some HP devices as well, I believe, and some Dells. But you can use that. It's a great application. It's only on mobile, but it's wonderful. I use it all the time. You can use Photoshop. You can use Illustrator to create these different drawings and just pass along like that little 25 pixel, 30 pixel, 50 pixel ending of your creation to the next person. And then you bring it all back at the end and you paste it all together in a big PSD, and then you all have fun looking at it, right? So there's additional ways to do it too, though. There's motion and video. So for that, of course, if we're talking in the Adobe world, we're going to be looking at Adobe After Effects and Adobe Animate. So here's an image taken from Animate with a couple of cats fighting each other with lightsabers here. But the idea behind here is you just take the last couple frames or the last couple seconds of the motion of the video that was produced, and you just hand that off to the next person. And the next person then takes that and continues on with it. And you create a linear exquisite corpse, right? It's not just like right there like a drawing is, where you can see the whole thing at once. It's time-based. So you've got this like flow from one point to the next, right? And lastly, you can do it with audio too. And I've done a number of these with audio, and they come out pretty cool. So even if you don't know how to compose music or how to, do stuff like this, you can use it just to like record environmental noises. Like I've had people do this where it's just like the sounds of like engines and things like that. And it's the same idea as with the video and the motion. You just pass on like the last few seconds of that to the next person, and they try to match it up with something else and continue on and to morph it and to make it, something completely different from what it was. And for this, of course, you could use Adobe Audition, and you might want to use an additional digital audio workstation to compose the audio if you're used to doing stuff like that. I recommend PreSonus Studio One for that sort of thing, but there's plenty of DAWs out there that allow you to do stuff like that. So that's it. That's the presentation for this evening, and I do have a couple things here. So don't forget to share any of the projects that you make, whether you do a Photoshop Tennis project with a small group of people, Or, you might try to do an exquisite corpse with, a larger group of people. That might be a fun thing to do during camp. And you can do this, across the whole week. This is something you could take back to your institutions and, make it actually like a project. I've had this as part of a project in classes before, and it works out like really, really well. It's like a group project, but, you're not really dependent on those kind of like, those weaknesses that creep up in group projects, right? Because everybody's responsible for their own piece of the whole thing, right? And if you do create something, share it with CreateEDU or Adobe EDU Creative so that we can find it. And, for any other Adobe-related professional development, you can contact Greg, who's organized this through EdgeGain and Adobe, and I'm sure he'd be happy to help out. Oh, so somebody asked, why is it called Exquisite Corpse? It's called that because there is a saying, and I can't quite remember it now, but it's something like, it's like a nonsense saying, like the exquisite corpse drinks the fresh wine or something like that. And it's just something that, like, people don't really know, I don't think, where exactly it came from. It's attributed to various individuals for saying that line as they were working through and creating exquisite corpses. Yeah. So, it's basically just like, I saw in the chat, like some people were mentioning like poetry and things like that. And that's definitely a way you could take this as well, is, somebody just writes a couple lines of poetry. They pass off the last line of the poetry to somebody else, and they have to continue with like 5 or 6 lines. And that's another way to do it. It's endlessly fun, right? Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone. And I hope you all have a good camp.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joseph.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing so somebody else can take over.
We will keep working on these Photoshop tennis projects as much as you want throughout the week, showing them in the mess hall channel so that the next tennis player can pick it up from there. Let's see, we are moving quickly through our opening reception. We just got a couple more things. We want to remind everyone that our first session tomorrow kicks off at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That's GMT -7. Tomorrow morning, you can find the link on our website. And if you get there early, about 7:30 a.m. PDT, one of our fabulous MCs, Brian Alexander, will be joining us for breakfast and banter. He's got some fun activities lined up to help you get to know your fellow campers and grab a seat at the table for President Crow's conversation. Some of you may have heard it as you came in, but we have a fabulous camp theme song. And this is an original piece of music written by the talented Work Pond. And I think we're just going to play that to close out. I'll turn it over to Work to share a little bit about the music for this week, a couple announcements there. But before we do, Sam, Lev, Aaron, any final thoughts you want to share?
Well, I just want to thank everyone so much for sticking with us at our opening reception. I know those of us on Central and Eastern U.S. time is getting a little late. I'm personally going to be hanging out here until 10 p.m. Central time, which is 8 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to be continuing to drink my coffee and bug juice, so feel free to hang out, of course. And the same goes for really all activities throughout the week. Learning Human is the place to linger, reflect, engage, move as you please. I really appreciate all the energy you brought tonight. We're really looking forward to what's in store for tomorrow.
I'll say I'm also going to be hanging out till 8 p.m. Pacific, which just happens to be Phoenix time as well right about now. And please do hang around. Tomorrow is going to be an awesome day, starting at 7:30 Pacific and going literally till 7:30 or even later tomorrow evening Pacific time. So do come with your own banana and yogurt and go for refills. The night is young out here on the West Coast at camp. You know, you always wondered what the camp chef was doing when she or he was holding up, you know, the container of bug juice to show you. I've already made a major revelation tonight, which it was actually a different kind of juice. I hope some of you might consider joining me tomorrow night for a little bit later conversation. And if need be, I can also make some recommendations. And with that, Warwick, why don't you say a little bit about our music for the week?
We have some excellent music for you this week. On Thursday, there's a concert series that you can watch either via Verbella on the beach, or you can participate on Zoom. We have some wonderful professional musicians that are willing to share their talents with us. We also have Warren Zane actually conducting a session as well, and he'll be playing for us as well. And there's a playlist that you can participate in. And of course, we will make available via Slack, to get you into Slack, the camp song. And you guys will all have access to it with the lyrics as well. So what is camp without music? So we're hopefully, I do look like a Boy Scout. Thanks, Art. I am an Eagle Scout. So
he's going to own it. He's going to own it. I love this man.
I'm an Eagle Scout. So, but we hope that you just enjoy the time and we can connect with each other via concert. And that's, again, 6 to 8 p.m. on Thursday night. So please join us. Let's have some fun and convene, not just about education and learning and all these digital tools, but also just the human side of learning human. Thanks, all. Mr. Q.
And it's old friends, long time no see. It's Zoom, Slack, and all the meetings. I reach out and learn it human. I can't wait for summer camp to begin, and I can't get enough of the new. I can't learn it from you, and it's oh my, we're taking a stand. Well, virtual education in command, responding with agility. I can't wait for the world to see, and I can't get enough of the new. I can't learn it from you, and it's campfires, stories to tell of education going well, changing people's opportunity in life, beating the odds despite the strife, and I can't learn it from you. I can't get enough of the new, yeah. And it's new friends I can't wait to meet. It's Zoom, Slack, and all the meetings. I reach out and learn it human. The summer camp, I'm a fan, and I can't get enough of the new. I can't learn it from you.